Okay. Hello to anybody who sees this, and to myself who's absolutely going to watch this back eventually later. I'm just popping on here today because I felt inspired to make this video. It feels like a very necessary message, not only for the collective, but for me. This is something that I struggle with and have continued to struggle with along my journey. And so I felt called to just come talk to myself and you guys. And yeah, we're just gonna see what happens. So the theme of this video today is breaking down the illusion of competition and lack. And to me, that goes into almost every area of my life, especially as a creative, as a business owner, and so many other things, like I find myself having so many different ideas and so many different downloads and so much inspiration, that I find around me through nature, through friends, through, content I consume. But even though I have all this inspiration and then, it might evolve into like an idea or something that I want to create, I find myself holding back because of the illusion of lack and competition. I don't know, maybe you can relate. Like for me, that looks like being inspired to, let's say, I'll just use this video as an example. And I haven't seen a video on this specifically, but, feeling like, for example, there's so many people out there who are giving this kind of message, like break down the barriers, just do it, like all that kind of stuff. And because of that, I'll convince myself that I don't need to show up in that way because somebody else already did something similar. Or, I don't want to seem like I am sorry guys, I don't want to seem like I am copying anybody or, hopping onto a trend when that's never the case for me personally. Like I said, I get inspired, and I feel like when we have these moments of inspiration or these downloads or these ideas, it's because it's needed. And that leads me into that illusion of lack, like going back to that same kind of energy where like, oh, somebody else might have already done something similar, therefore I don't need to, or therefore there's no room for me to. But that is just not true. And the more that I do actually find the courage to show up and to take action on my inspiration, the more that I realize that there is a need. The people around me are perfect example of that. Like I've had to realize over time, through showing up, that everybody's not exposed to the same things I'm exposed to. And it is my responsibility and part of, well, not my responsibility, but it is part of my calling to help spread certain information to the people around me. I do feel like that is why certain people are drawn to me and drawn to you. Like whatever it is that you do or want to do, there's a need for that. There's a reason that you feel that inspiration or have had that idea. But again, I just think so many of us talk ourselves out of doing things that we want to do and that the collective needs us to do because we think that the market is oversaturated, or again, we don't want to seem like, we're copying other people or whatever the case may be. Like the number of ideas that I've had that are just sitting in my notes somewhere on my phone, or, you know, drafts that I've typed out, courses that I've like written and broken down and started on, but just like haven't shared because of this fear that is wrapped into this illusion of lack and competition. And for me, I think that that comes from a lot of different places. Of course, like society, mainstream media, like it's all presented in this way of like, you know, everything is limited. You have to get it while it's hot. You have to be like on trend. You have to show up in this specific way in order to fit in over here. And then that just becomes like this huge like trash pile that buries all the inspiration and really just ultimately prevents, I know for me, it prevents me from moving forward on things that I really want to do. So I felt like I needed to make this video first before diving into a lot of those other things, because I'm hoping that, you know, I can watch it back and be reminded that none of that is real, and that, you know, hopefully somebody else out there who does eventually see this can also, you know, recognize that there is room for you to show up and to follow through on your inspiration. And there are people out there who are looking for you and the way that you do these things. And that is, you know, I think the biggest part of moving through that and actually taking action is you're going to have your own unique way of showing up, of providing this information, of relating it to your own personal experience. You know, I've been through so many things that sure other people can relate to in their own way, but of course nobody else has lived my life but me. And so the way that I'm going to create a class or a group or deliver a message is going to be very unique, and you just never know who needs to hear it from you, who needs to meet you and hear your story or be exposed to the information that you have collected along your journey. So yeah, I had to make this, and I'm just kind of flowing. Like I didn't have a plan, and that's another thing that like I don't know if you have experienced but I know for myself I've definitely like, you know, made up reasons to not show up at a certain time like while I'm feeling inspired, because I'm like, it has to be this way, I have to look this way, I have to sound this way, I need to plan it all out. And then of course, like during the process of doing all of that, I end up losing the motivation to actually do the thing, and then it just becomes another, you know, dust bunny in a drawer somewhere. And so I think it's really important, like, to just show up in those moments of inspiration. And I just got back from having a really incredible time with a new friend of mine where we talked a lot about this, because, you know, she's in a similar situation where she has this incredible skill set that a lot of people aren't aware of, this incredible experience where she's fought her way, you know, into having a life of her own, you know. But there's this fear of rebranding, of no longer being what people expect you to be because of who you have been. And like there is this overcoming when you turn into, you know, this new, more empowered version of yourself, and maybe the people around you are used to you being a people pleaser, or used to you, you know, showing up in a specific way, and then all of a sudden maybe you've had an awakening, or maybe you know, decided to turn your life around and, I don't know, like stop indulging in certain addictions or whatever, but everybody in your circle is still into that. And so it's like it can be difficult to allow yourself to show up in a more authentic way, because at the end of the day, when you are living from that space of people pleasing and you are, you know, surrounded by other people who benefit from you being that version of yourself. It can be really scary to break through, especially if like you've built your whole support system around that false version of you. But really what you're doing when you decide to take that leap of faith and you decide to show up in a more authentic way, you're just aligning with the things that you actually want and deserve. And it's so important to recognize that, because what ends up happening when you ignore that and you choose to continue to stay small and be concerned with how that's going to be, you know, how you showing up authentically is going to be perceived, you end up imprisoning yourself further. And that just becomes, again, another reason why you don't show up. And so we had this discussion today for, you know, a couple hours at least about, you know, what that has looked like for us and our personal goals, and like, you know, why have we not shown up still for these certain aspects. Of course, like both of us have taken these steps to put ourselves out there in this very, you know, particular way, or try to, you know, expose people to our truths and our professions. Like for me, that's psychic mediumship, that's, you know, being an artist. It's a lot of non-traditional things that, you know, typically a lot of people aren't used to being exposed to, or they just have a really difficult time wrapping their head around it. They don't understand it, or it goes against, you know, their beliefs, their upbringing, their comfort zone specifically. But, you know, through that discussion, you know, we were talking about how necessary that is, because through following through on your inspiration, regardless of what that looks like, if that's something, especially if that's something that's not traditionally accepted or explored by your community, and it's all the more necessary for you to do it so that other people can get to that point where they are able to show up authentically as well and share their knowledge and their experience. It just creates space for people to be themselves and to do their healing. Because it's very easy to stay, again, in that like kind of lower state of consciousness where you're just kind of going through the motions, or you're, you know, codependent on a substance or people or whatever, because, you know, it's just not as scary. You have, again, that false sense of support that kind of tethers you there. And so I kind of, again, I didn't have a plan for this. I kind of did actually, but I threw it in the trash and I was like, look, it's just one of those moments where you just have to show up, and as you're talking, like, it will come to you. And whether or not it is what I had envisioned is irrelevant, because what really needs to happen is I continue to show up. And if I continue to show up, then whatever is meant for me to say or share with you guys will continue to come, and I will continue to just be able to share it. So if I forget anything right now, like, that's another thing I'm trying to like forgive myself for, or just work through. It doesn't really require forgiveness, but just kind of work through, is like, you know, that need to have things look a very specific way, or, you know, if I don't have a plan, then it's not going to go well. That's not necessarily the case with this type of content, you know, like, so yeah, it was really important for me to just sit down and do this video this way, without attaching a ton of things to it, especially expectation, competition, and lack. Okay. So, jumping back in. Another thing that we talked about during this meeting earlier was like how many people are really in need of a space where they feel safe to show up as themselves, so that they can explore what life could look like outside of the constraints that they've placed upon themselves, you know, like whether that be showing up in a specific way due to your culture, your religion, family expectations, career expectations. You know, there's so many ways that we collectively tie ourselves down or place ourselves into a box, and then, you know, it leaves us feeling empty or unfulfilled, or, you know, like we're living our lives for other people when really we're meant to live our lives fully and authentically and explore and continue to learn and spread joy, and just grow together. And that's not possible if you put yourself in this box and stay there. And, you know, going back to the illusion of lack and competition, there's so many people on this planet, again, like, you know, even just looking at the people that I've met and, you know, the time that I've been doing House B, there's so many people who don't have any exposure to the knowledge that you might have, the skill set that you might have, because they've been in their box. And you never know, like, you might be the catalyst for somebody finally taking a leap to fulfill their dreams, finally getting out of a bad relationship, finally walking away from their toxic boss to, you know, do something unrealistic. But the more of us that show up in this way, the more of us that choose to live authentically regardless of the status quo, the more empowered others become to do the same thing. And then things like that, you know, 10, 25 years ago that weren't realistic, like the work that I do, for example, it becomes more acceptable, it becomes more common. It's like the space has to be created, and it takes more than one person to do that. You know, there's so many people out there who are in need of whatever it is that you're sitting on and still thinking about. Whatever it is, like, it really doesn't matter. There's something that you have been wanting to do, that you've written down, that you've dreamt about, that you've told like your closest friends, that you just haven't done because you're afraid of maybe offending other people, or not being well received, just in general, you know, not becoming like popular or whatever. But it's not about that. It's really about you just finding your happiness and choosing what is going to make you happy at the end of the day, and then turning that into something, you know, if you want to, turning that into something that can improve your life in other ways, like financially, socially, whatever. But again, not the point. The point is to just show up without those limitations. Yeah. There's so many things, like even with, I recently partnered with another business owner to form this group for people to come, you know, educate themselves around spirituality, shed limiting beliefs, be exposed to other people who maybe they could relate to. Again, like, you know, a form of community, a safe space where people can come and, you know, explore, showing up authentically, and connect with other people who maybe are struggling with the same thing, so that, you know, it's not such a lonely journey, as well as be connected to resources to help along that journey. And for me personally, this is something that I have been wanting to do since at least 2021. 2021 was when, like, I knew exactly what it needed to look like, I'll say. And it's 2024 now, almost 2025, and there have been so many things along the way that have stopped me from doing that. And it's not like I didn't try. I've definitely tried partnering with other people, and there were, obstacles there, and that's a whole separate thing. But even when I did start to, take steps toward creating this in the past, or even now that it's created and it's out there, I still deal with, the knowledge that other groups like that exist, or that maybe the person I just told about it also wants to do something similar, or maybe they are doing something similar, but again, like, it's not the way that I'm doing it. And it's like, that battle of, choosing to just not care and do it anyway, without that having to mean anything. Like, not having to mean that you think like the other person's not doing it the way you would, or it doesn't mean that you can't do it too, or there's not room for you, or that you're copying anybody. Like, I know this is something that I've been wanting to do for years before I even met the other people that also had a similar idea. But I still, it will have these encounters with other people where I'm like, oh, you want to do it too? Oh, like, oh, there's this inner resistance. It's like, okay, well, if they're gonna do it, then maybe I shouldn't. But like, no, that's not real. And again, like, the spaces that do exist that I have come across that are doing like a moon circle, there are a lot of moon circles. There's a few that I know of. They're not centered around the same kind of healing that I'm bringing to the table, because those people who created it have not lived my life, have not had the experiences that I've had. They have not attained the specific knowledge that I have. And so it's not real. And I've even had people like along the way, speaking of like, trying to make it happen in the past, and, encountering certain obstacles. I've even had people along the way, as I was like, oh, I want to do this. Like, I would like to use your space. I had one woman whose event space, I was like, I would like to rent your event space to hold this healing circle. And she literally told me, like, everybody does that, do something else. And I told her in that moment, like, no, like, yeah, there's moon circles, but this is very specific, this, and this. And she still just kind of brushed it off and didn't take it seriously. And I carried that with me. I really was like, I mean, is everybody doing this? Like, I've seen a couple. And then even like going into the next partnership, and that kind of fell through. And then I got invited to a moon circle. And she's like, isn't this funny? We wanted to do this and now we're at one. And that was, in the moment, discouraging. It had an adverse effect. I was like, yeah, this is beautiful, but again, it's not mine, and of course it was healing, and the person hosting it is amazing. But it wasn't the same as what I wanted to create, and I just think that's so important, especially like in hindsight. I do not regret the time it took to get here, and the time it took to come into alignment with the right business partner and the right venue and all of that, like, because it wouldn't be as authentically me and what I've been wanting to create had it happened back then with those other people. And so I definitely think that the timing and all of it is exactly what it needs to be. But I say all that to say, like, regardless of all of that, like I carried so much of that energy with me. And I had a conversation with my husband last night, actually, talking about how, like, you know, certain things, when they trigger me, if I'm not able to resolve it right then and there, I will carry it with me. And he was like, I get that, but it's a choice. And he was absolutely right. Like, yes, my ego says I need to feel validated, I need to be seen, I need to be heard in this moment, I need to prove them wrong. That's not who I am, that's not what I'm trying to do. But in reality, like, it doesn't do anything but hold me in that vibration of shame or resentment or disappointment or whatever. It just keeps me looping that moment of disappointment and unfulfillment. And then instead of being able to move on and like actively like pursue the thing, I'm stuck processing and mourning the loss of something that wasn't for me in the first place. Again, because like, had I gotten the opportunity, like had those opportunities fully manifested at the time that I was pursuing them, it wouldn't have been this, I wouldn't have been this version of me. And I frankly feel much more prepared to take this on now than I was even just 6 months ago. And so I just think it's so important to try to separate ourselves from these beliefs that we hold within us, that things have to look a certain way, or that we can't show up because somebody else said we couldn't, or somebody else is doing something similar. It really doesn't matter. The people who are for you are out there, but they're not going to be able to find you unless you are showing up. Especially the right people aren't going to be able to find you unless you are showing up as yourself. And the more that we continue to limit ourselves and show up halfway, or, you know, not follow through, the more we're missing out on the beauty that is out there waiting for us, the connection, the support, further inspiration. Like, I don't want to be spending the next however long thinking about the same old ideas that I have had but haven't acted on. I want to put this stuff out there. I want it to be seen. I want to find more of my tribe. I want to connect with people. I want to continue learning. But I can't do that from my bubble. It's just not possible. It's not. Like going like into delusion. That's the most delusional thing you could do, is think that you are somehow going to make it or manifest all these incredible dreams that I'm sure you have without showing up and following through as yourself, sharing your truth. And I, of course, have so many other like things that I'm personally working through, you know, regarding how I show up and what I share. But like, Spirit has been really nagging at me lately to just show up and to throw all the illusion out the window. Like, it doesn't matter. I don't care if like there are 50,000 other people who have made a similar video, or who are, you know, holding moon circles, or who are psychic mediums. I literally had a girl, it's kind of irritated me. I literally had a woman a couple weeks ago now, Small Business Saturday, I did a pop-up. This woman I'd never met before makes polymer clay jewelry, you guys, just for context. And that's all the context. Polymer jewelry is just not my thing. It's just not my thing. I like vintage. I like, you know, unique. like that kind of thing. Like, and so, I'm just kind of like being nice and supportive and checking her stuff out. And she's really like aggressively trying to get me to buy stuff after complaining that she did not make enough money. And I was very much put off by that. So I'm kind of like trying to ease my way like away without being rude. And she's like, oh, what do you do again? And I'm like, I'm a psychic medium, da 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 da. And she's like, oh, well, that's why like your day didn't go like as you expected. Everybody around here is a reader. And I was like, everybody makes polymer jewelry. And it was, I don't know, it was, first of all, it was extremely rude because I didn't know her. And even if I did, like, that's just like rude thing to say. But it's like stuff like that can be so discouraging. And of course, like when you are doing something, like I said, that's non-traditional or that you do see other people doing, you already kind of have it in your head, like, how can I make myself stand out? How can I da da da? And I already know from the time that I've been doing this that I do stand out. Because yeah, there's a ton of tarot readers, but I'm also a psychic medium, and I'm also an artist, and I also make spiritual wellness goods, and I also do like a ton of other stuff from like my corporate life before deciding to do this. She doesn't know that because she doesn't know me. She chose to just kind of like typecast me in that moment. But it's like stuff like that, like that can be so like off-putting and discouraging. But I'm telling you right now, like, don't let it stop you. Don't let it stop you. And what's crazy is after she said that to me, she realized that I regularly read at that location. And I also sold my products in that location. And then she followed me right after. I did not follow her back. I'm just throwing that out there, and I will not. But, people who, and it was very clear too, that's why I'm like using this as an example too. It's oftentimes people who aren't happy with themselves. Again, like this woman spent almost that entire event complaining about how she wasn't making as good of sales as last year, and she wasn't, all of this stuff was going on wrong around her. And then she projected that onto me. I was fine with how I did. I was chilling. I had a great night. It was cool. I met some cool people. And it's always going to be somebody like that who wants to rain on your parade or tell you everybody else is doing that. I swear to God, every single person who has tried to tell me like, oh, well, that's already being done, or, oh, everybody does that, or I don't know, like, how are you going to like make it unique? It is not any of their fucking business, first of all. You don't owe anybody an explanation. You don't owe anybody like a full breakdown of your business plan or your ideas just to prove that you deserve to show up. Like, and that's something that I had to really learn, because I did spend so much of my life like attaching my self-worth to what other people perceived it to be. People who didn't even know me, didn't take the time to get to know me, had no idea what I do, my background, my skills, like none of it. Like they're just like, oh, you look like, nah, like, and it's just like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And I highly recommend to like setting really strong boundaries with people like that. If you have people around you who are like that, who just constantly have a word of discouragement and also like are constantly projecting, their sad story into your magic, like that is just going to perpetuate the feeling of there always being competition, or there being lack, or you needing to show up in this very, very specific way. Otherwise, like, what's the point? Because everybody else is doing it. Like, that's not the case at all. It's just not real. And people, if you listen to other people, like that, they will have you believing that that is real and that is not worth it for you to do the things that you love. So yeah, I don't know. Again, I'm sure there's more things I could say. I don't know how much longer I'm going to sit here and talk. And I don't have a plan. I'm just here. But I had to come up here and say this again, not just for you guys, but for me, because I'm going to need this reminder. I know I'm going to have another day or another experience where I'm going to come across a hater, or I'm just not feeling inspired. And I'm just like, you know what, like maybe today I'm just going to stay in bed, you know, and sometimes that's cool too. Sometimes it's absolutely necessary. But overall, like, we have a duty to ourselves to show up, nobody else. So do it for you. Get that energy out. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to build and build inside of you, and you're gonna literally feel like you're gonna explode. That's why people like snap the fuck off sometimes, because they have all of this pent up energy that they don't know how to release, or they're afraid to release. They don't have anybody they feel like they can connect to, because they're not showing up authentically, like, and it just sometimes can spiral out of control. Of course, that's not always the case. I'm just saying, like, that has been the case for me and a lot of people that I've spoken to who want to do big things but are having difficulty following through on those things. So I don't know, guys, like, now is the time. Like, now more than ever is the time that we need to just show up and take off all these like blinders, or like the expectations, the you know, the competition, the limitation, all of it, the need to be perfect. That's another thing. Like, I was talking to my friend about today, is like, you know, we were discussing, well, why don't you show up? Why don't you show up? And it was just like, well, sometimes I like feel like I have to like put my whole face on, and I have to, you know, prepare the message and all this other stuff. And it's like, no, like, the world needs more people to show up again, like, just raw. Just, it's not, I was about to say just don't care. It's not like don't care at all, but don't care about that, you know? Like, I'm hearing that song. I don't remember the song. It's a Kanye West song, but it's just like, you're worried about the wrong things, the wrong things. I don't remember. That's just the lyric that just played in my head, though. And it's like, that part should not matter. What matters is whatever message, product, service that you are wanting to put out there. And my battery's about to die here. Like, you are being given these ideas, this inspiration, these bursts of energy, so that you can bring these things into the world, because the world needs whatever it is right now. And I also think, and I said this actually to somebody a couple months ago, like, that is why a lot of people have similar ideas, because it's such a need, because there's literally billions of us down here, and more people are awakening. More and more people are trying to break out of dysfunctional systems, and a lot of us have already tried traditional methods of healing and creating and making a living and so many other things. Like, we are being ushered into this new era where, you know, healers and creatives are being taken more seriously, because we are able to help people with the things that maybe they've already tried getting professional medical help with, and that just unfortunately wasn't the answer. I mean, that's part of my story as well, is that's, you know, more or less like how I ended up on this path. I literally tried so many things to get control of up here, you know, medicine and, you know, seeing specialists, you know, because I had so much pent up energy that I was having physical, like it was manifesting as physical symptoms in my body, and I didn't know where they were coming from. And it got to the point where I was so like desperate, for lack of a better word, that I was like, okay, spirit, like, please help me, because I don't know what the heck is going on. And I tried freaking everything that I'm aware of, like, and now, you know, years later, I'm in a place where I'm able to help other people facilitate that change in their life. And that's not to say that, you know, other methods of healing, you know, aren't real or don't work. It's just certain things do require a non-traditional means of assistance. And so now more than ever, if you were feeling inspired to step up in this non-traditional way or to share your gift, even if that's like, you know, like if you don't even view it as something that can be healing, like say you are, a musician, or I don't know, an athlete or something. I feel like athletes, like they definitely have their place and have for some time, but you know, say it's something non-traditional and you know, I kind of lost I'm off the tracks, guys. Going off, don't say that, not off the rails, but I lost my train of thought here. But it's, the space for you is out there, is what I'm trying to say. Regardless of what it is that you're wanting to do and create with this life that you've been given, there is space for you to do that. And that's kind of going back to what I was saying about, I think that's why so many different people will get similar ideas, because there's a huge demand for whatever it is that you have to offer. Just because you can't like see it, you know, immediately, or it's not being marketed through mainstream media, does not mean that there's not space for it. And like something that we collectively are going to grow to acknowledge and understand is that that space is actively being created. Just like with what I do, you know, there's people who came before me, like Edgar Cayce Center, for example. Like because of Edgar Cayce, there is now a whole center for people who study spirituality and, you know, practice mediumship and holistic wellness to congregate to share their gifts. And then so on, you know, people who have had the courage to show up authentically before us have now created the space for more and more people to come in and do the same thing. And it's the same thing with whatever it is you want to do. It doesn't matter. But if you're not seeing it out there, it's because you're the one who's supposed to get it done, to pave the way so that it can become mainstream. And trust me, like, people need your services. Like, coming into this and doing what I do, like, I had all these same thoughts. That's why I'm talking about this. And you know, even to this day, like, you know, it takes other people coming across me and talking to me, and then, you know, having that interaction for me to realize how impactful my authentic existence actually is. You know, like I spent 28 years of my life being what I thought I needed to be palatable for other people, and it left me miserable and unfulfilled, and I didn't know who I was as a grown woman. I did not know who I was because I never gave myself the opportunity to be her. And sure, there were a lot of external circumstances that contributed to that, but it wasn't until that point in my life that I realized that. and started to very, very uncomfortably break free. And then as I've become me, and met other people as my authentic self instead of that other version of me that I thought I needed to be, I've come to realize how necessary it is that I show up this way. And like, no sugarcoating, no mincing, no people pleasing, just me. And sometimes that still makes people uncomfortable. Sometimes it still makes me uncomfortable. But I will say, in hindsight, I always grow to understand why things had to pan out that specific way. And I'm still learning, you guys. Like, I don't have this down at all. Like, I'm practicing right now making this video. But this is a step in the right direction. And like, you know, like, that's really all it is. It's every day just taking another step toward being who you want to be, living in your truth, creating, showing up, you know. And if you've been following me like on Instagram, or I mean, really Instagram is the main platform that I consistently use, you know, I have talked about that here and there, like showing up and not needing to know, you know, what the next step is necessarily. And I think that's something else that like, I know I get stuck on, and I'm sure other people get stuck on, is like, if I don't have the whole thing planned out, start to finish, I can't start. And that's just not the case. Just like with this video, I was like, you know what? Like, I still don't know what I'm going to say, but I'm going to talk, and I'm just going to say whatever comes to mind while I'm talking. I just trust that whatever I'm meant to share is what is going to come through, because that's what I do, and I have to just trust it. And again, if something else comes up, then I guess I need to make another video and keep taking those steps forward. So yeah, guys, we're going on 48 minutes. I don't know. I hope that this does reach the right people. I hope that if you took the time to watch this, first of all, if you took the time to watch this all the way through, thank you. 48 on the timer. When I said that, I'm going to look it up. But also, I hope that if you took the time to watch this, that you got something from it. I hope that you walk away from this video feeling, you know, a little bit more open to just being yourself, sharing your light with the world. I hope that you care a little less about what other people think or have to say. I hope that you feel like there is space for you to show up in whatever way that you want to show up. Like, there is space for you to be you, to provide whatever it is you feel the need to provide to the world. Like, we're all waiting to see you and what you want to share with us. So just go for it. You're probably so fucking amazing and nobody knows it because you haven't shown up yet. So I'm telling you that I'm waiting. I want to see what you have to offer. I want to get to know who you really are. I care. Yeah. So I think that is it for me right now. Thank you guys again. And I look forward to seeing you.